Hey, it's the Midnight Raven, and dressed like I am going to a funeral, I want to start a new series on my channel. And this is going to be ghost stories. So, I love everything paranormal, macabre, dark, sinister. And today we're going to do a ghost story called the Bloodstone Ring. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm the Midnight Raven, and I don't always dress like this. It is boiling outside. But I am dressed to the nines for this ghost story. So this is Revengeful Ghosts and Curses, and this is the Bloodstone Ring. Let's get into this story. So, gale force winds had lashed Willisham, ripping slates and tiles from the roofs. It had torn up trees, and a large oak tree had been toppled. Villagers rushed to the tree because it was a massive tree and they wanted to see if anybody had been hurt. When they arrived at the tree had been uprooted, and within the roots of the trees, human remains had been spotted. So, of course, the villagers did the best thing they could and called the police. The police were called, and the human remains were found in a shallow grave underneath the tree. One of the human remains was a dismembered hand. The hand itself still had a wedding ring on the finger. So the policeman had a hunch and went to a woman called Ellen Gray. Now, her sister had gone missing 18 years before. So, some of the remains found and they followed, and apparently they took these remains to this woman and found that it was her sister Mary. So the ring on her finger was a bloodstone. It was a wedding gift to her, and it was also her birthstone. So on her 18th birthday, Mary had married Basil Osborne. She had written a letter to John Bodensey, her sweetheart since childhood, asking for his forgiveness just an hour before she was due to marry. So, as newlyweds, they were going on a honeymoon. Before they left the wedding reception, Mary had asked for some time alone. She went to an upstairs room, I guess maybe to gather her thoughts, to take some time for herself. And after a while, Basil, her husband, would arrive with the coach that was going to take them to the honeymoon. He waited downstairs for her and gave her some time that she needed, but she never came down, insisting that she needed some time alone. Obviously, she was left by herself. She was left in what they call the bride and groom room. They were left there, and after a while, he decided to go and find her. So he went up to the room and found the room empty. Mary had disappeared. The only thing in the room was an open window. Now, this open window led to some steps that went down to a garden. So it was assumed that Mary had fled for whatever reason. But 18 years later, human remains identified as Mary had now been found. It would show that Mary had been killed from a broken neck. Ellen, the sister, was able to identify her sister by the wedding band on her hand. That was obviously given to her as a birthday present because it was her birthstone, but it was given to her as a wedding gift. So her husband would be obviously doing his various nuts, wondering why his wife would abandon him. They just got married, they were due to go on honeymoon. Why would she just vanish? So the public were aware that, things in the marriage weren't 100%, but they were marrying and they were trying. So, during the investigation, Ellen was dying. This is the sister. And she was left a provision in her will that the hand of her dead sister Mary was to be displayed in a public place after her passing. Ellen unfortunately would die, leaving this in her will to her housekeeper Maggie. Now, Maggie went on to open a pub in Willisham, and on the wall, in a display box, was Mary's dead corpse hand, still wearing the Bloodstone ring. So, the Bloodstone ring was now a staple display in the housekeeper's pub. So, the background was a black velvet background. It had the dead woman's hand in it, and it was in a case. Now, the murder was a topic, of course, around the pub. I mean, you have a dead woman's hand encased on the wall in a pub. You're going to be like, what on earth is this doing in a pub? And you'd be more than welcome to ask that question. So, on a night in March in 1895, a stranger was listening to some locals talk about the case of Mary and the hand on the wall. The stranger seemed angry and said, "I don't understand what oak tree." Moments later, he screamed, and whilst being pinned against the wall, his finger was dripping blood. Now, the men that were talking had recognized him as Mary's old sweetheart, John. The police were then called, and John would confess to the murder of Mary in a frenzied, jealous attack. He had gone to the wedding that day and found the bride alone in the room upstairs. She was crying, and he wanted to carry her out of that room. He insisted he didn't mean to kill her, but while he carried her to the big oak tree where she was later found dead, she was struggling, and he accidentally broke her neck. So, to not show that he'd done the crime, he quickly dug up under the oak tree and buried her in a shallow grave. He then fled the village, apparently never to return. But many years later, he felt compelled to come back to the village for whatever reason. He was then arrested and died of an unknown disease in prison. The police would dismiss the old wives' tale that a murderer's hand can sometimes drip blood when forced with the proof of the crime. Mary's hand was later buried with the rest of her body, and this case now is solved. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if I made a couple of little mistakes in that. I do get a little bit nervous on camera, but dressed like I'm at a funeral / wedding, hence the story. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you want more ghost stories. I don't know whether the old wives' tales that a murderer's hand can sometimes drip blood when faced with the proof of their crime, but it is a very interesting story of a woman that married her husband, had a sweetheart, he loved her, she was struggling with who to be with, and it's just a very sweet story that had a very unfortunate, tragic end. But if you want to like, subscribe, and give us a big thumbs up, comment down below any ghost stories that you think I should read, and I will see you very soon for another video. Take care and thanks for watching. Bye guys.